when he started was like about 19, right after the war. And Paris was not like Paris at all. You know, it was in rubbles. Everything was bombed out. And the French industry and the fashion magazines wanted him to, you know, photograph the elegance of Paris, but it didn't exist. So he went and he created sets. When he put someone at a pinball machine, that the bistro was not like that. It was just wasn't like that. He made, you know, he redecorated the bistro, bought these models there. There was nothing to drink. There was no no glasses, nothing. So when you see the people, the women coming out of their limousines, that was imagination. Just happens that the Prix de France, the bicycle riders, were coming into town, and he had a model that he was photographing some, you know, with some coat, and he said, "Go and hug the model, the bicycle rider." That wasn't planned. She goes over to the bicycle rider, you know, hugs him, sweaty, and that's how he got that picture. But the whole thing was the sleeve of the coat. When you look at the pictures, you know, it's not just fashion. He was photographing these women, the anxiety of women, you know, you're getting dressed to go out, and what do you look like? You know, and they're looking in the mirror and they see, well, you know, it's not quite right. Will I look good enough? And he created narratives of all of that. And when you see the difference, it was all gay and light, but sometimes the women got sad. And sometimes they would cry on the train because they lost their boyfriend. And when he presented one of the pictures to Carmel Snow, the editor, and she was wearing a Dior hat, and she said, "We can't publish that. No one cries in a Dior hat." He goes back into New York, and all of a sudden, you know, it's the 50s and 60s. And really the 60s, it was Dick invented each period, or he made it, he photographed, and that was the period documented. Like in the 60s, he was at Andy Warhol's Black and White Ball, and there Diana Vreeland introduced him to Penelope Tree. And this was this young girl, skinny, doing her own makeup, very well born, but she was completely eccentric, and Dick just fell in love with this person, tall, skinny, smart, with crazy makeup and crazy hair. He invited her into the studio, no hair, no makeup. You know, "Penelope, you do what you want to do." So she created her own makeup, and then he had makeup people exaggerating it. And Polly Mellon, who was a fashion editor at the time, he said, "Just bring me clothes, bring me clothes." So she brings clothes like the Beatles clothes that she got, you know, in just stores. And Penelope tried on the little pantsuit, and she said, and Dick said, "This is great." And he wasn't even finished, and he drags her, Penelope, onto the set. And Polly Mellon is saying, "You can't do that, Dick, you can't do that. The pants are too short." And he says, "I don't care." And he photographed Penelope all the time through the 60s. And really, again, you know, it was the 70s and 80s, and he defined those periods with work he did for Gianni Versace. He not only defined the 70s and 80s, you know, the excess and the glamour, but he defined a fashion photographer, because Gianni Versace, when Dick started working with him, really was unknown. And Gianni came to him and said, "I want you to photograph my collection." And this was perfect. They had money. Dick had, you know, knew exactly what to do, you know, give an image to Versace. And then he decided, when he really didn't like what was happening, he would go to work for the New Yorker. And he went to Tina, and she said yes. And the first assignment that he was first staff photographer for New Yorker. And so when and she asked him to do a fashion issue, which he really didn't want to do. He wanted to do portraits for the New Yorker, which he did. Some of the great portraits are in the New Yorker, but he said, "Okay, I'll do it, but I want to do what I want to do in fashion." And she said, "Go and do it." So he did. I mean, Tina was fabulous, because he told her the idea, And then she never asked him again till the end. He had this idea of creating a whole narrative about the death of fashion. And it was with a skeleton, and all the pictures in this were couture clothes, so it was fashion. But it was a skeleton, and he was a photographer, dressed in men's couture, and a beautiful model, Nadja Auerman, and it was their life together. And they ran the whole story, in memory of the late Mr. and Mrs. Comfort. It was a fable. His last fashion pictures, the ones he did in 2000, and the pictures, again, are very, very dark and very beautiful and modern and minimal and beautiful in a way. But the very last picture, and the very last picture in the book, is a picture with a metal, a metal mouthpiece. And he felt that was the last thing, shutting up women, shutting up the whole fashion industry. And that was, one of his last photographs.